Hello, Abnormals, and welcome to the Ministry of Abnormality. I am your host, O Abnormal, and today I would like to talk to you guys about digesting your skills. Do you find that sometimes you have done a bunch of courses and you have a bunch of books and you've gone through all this learning material and yet you don't see any improvement? You've studied so many things and none of it seems to stick. What's going on? Well, you're not digesting your skills. Let's see. Throughout my years as a teacher, I've come across many different kinds of students. There have been lazy students that just don't understand why they're not getting any results, in spite of hardly putting any effort at all into their training. There's disciplined students that always do everything well, but lack creativity, so they always create well-made images without any real impact. There are naturally gifted students that always seem on the verge of exploding into something awesome, but somehow always come out a bit short. There are students that are surprised to discover that illustration is hard work, and so they realize that perhaps they actually didn't want to be illustrators after all. And then there are students that are thirsty for knowledge and constantly seek to learn new things. This is a great attitude to have. But a few years ago, I was teaching a course in character design, and I mentioned an online tutorial as a recommendation, only to find out most of the students already had it in their library. When I later on mentioned the book, again, they already had it. Little by little, every single video, book, YouTube tutorial, and so on that I mentioned was met with the same answer. They already had all of them. As the course moved forward, I eventually came to the realization that not only did the students have all the learning materials I had, but they actually had more. A lot more. Students would show up in class and proudly display new art instruction books that they had bought. They'd bring their external hard drives to class and exchange hundreds of gigabytes worth of tutorial videos, and they would spend considerable amounts of money going to lectures, panels, and workshops with industry artists. And yet, there they were, in a course with me, learning the basics of anatomy as if they had never drawn anything beyond a stick figure in their entire lives. I teach basic human head construction based mostly on the contents of Bern Hogarth's Drawing the Human Head, which they all had. And yet they all saw the class as completely new information. I can't think of a single artist that isn't at least aware of Andrew Loomis's book, Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. And yet, whenever I teach the proportions of the human body as presented in it, my students take the ideas presented as new and groundbreaking. At first, I determined that the explanation to why these aspiring artists had all this knowledge in their possession, and yet seemed unaware of it, appeared to be quite simple. They had the material, but had not studied it. But further questioning revealed that while this was the case with some of them, some others had definitely read the books, watched the videos, and gone through the materials. So then I came up with another explanation. They just weren't practicing. And surely that could explain some of the situation, but not all of it. While topics like anatomy and such take years to master, and a student expecting to advance in their skill level without disciplined practice is as absurd as it is common, still, a concept as simple as the hand being more or less the size of the face isn't exactly something that requires reflection and disciplined repetition. And yet, there they were, placing their hands against their faces, surprised at how it fit. The answer came to me later on, when one of my students triumphantly announced that he had acquired yet another few gigabytes worth of tutorials during the weekend, and that, even more impressive, he had already gone through most of the material. His classmates admitted their envy, flattering him with affirmations that he would go pro, and joking that one day they would look at his work in a AAA video game and be able to say that they knew him. Satisfied, the student and his inflated ego sat down to continue to struggle with basic anatomy, as one of his classmates determined drawing hands to be too hard, and then asked if anybody had a tutorial for that particular subject. Naturally, they did. As they hunched over their sketchbooks, I wondered how this student had managed to go through several gigabytes worth of tutorials during a weekend. And so I realized the problem. These students were simply not digesting their skills. Imagine artistic skill as if it were food. If you have a meal, you have to stop eating for a while in order for your body to digest it. Eat more than you should, and your body will handle it in an undesirable manner. Eat too much, and your body will simply push back, making you vomit, and no nutrients will be gained. You will have eaten, but no benefit will be gained at all. Or imagine you're lifting weights at the gym, and you've managed to bench press 100 kilos. You're not just going to do one rep and then add more weight to it. Of course not. You'll do that weight for a while until you're ready for more. As with your body, your mind also needs time to digest, process, and get used to the new skills you are presented with. Each and every new thing you learn requires for you to think about it a bit and then try it out. Once you have tried it, you'll see what works and what doesn't. And then you need to go over the material again to see what you missed the first time. You then have to practice some more. Go over the material again and again, as much as is needed. And finally, incorporate this new skill into your existing set of abilities. This process takes time, patience, and discipline. And while we all probably knew this already, you'd be surprised at how many novice artists fail to apply this methodology to their learning process. Every semester at the university, I teach topics like reflexive lighting or rendering hair. Normally, the students that have art styles involving line work have trouble with some of these rendering techniques because their application in an image that has outlines isn't immediately obvious. In order to successfully assimilate the knowledge, you would have to first learn it, then practice it as it was presented, and then consider how the knowledge can be applied to your own way of doing things. Along the way, you will adapt and change the knowledge gained to make it your own. And your own style will also be affected by each new skill you add to your repertoire. But many students simply go over the material and then hurry back to whatever way they used to do things before, concluding in the end that something like reflections or volume simply doesn't go with their style. It's easy to understand why aspiring artists behave this way, accumulating tutorials, books, and courses as if they were Pokemon, and never really stopping to train one until it evolves. As with the pocket monsters, we have this belief that the ultimate goal is to catch 'em all, failing to realize that if all we have is hundreds of untrained, unevolved Pokemon, we're still going to get our asses kicked. And since I have never managed to actually play a Pokemon game, that is as far as I can go with that analogy. For all I know, having all the Pokemon at base level is the most effective strategy in the game. Who knows? The only one I tried made very little sense to me. That'd be Pokemon Black. But anyway, Our artistic skills are much more like a classic role-playing game. You have to spend time with each one to level it up. And a lot of times, a good set of a few well-chosen, well-developed abilities will triumph over a complete set of underdeveloped skills. Of course, as you advance through the campaign, you'll increase your skill set, and eventually become overpowered, breezing through the game's challenges as its monsters are woefully beneath your mighty attacks. But if, on the other hand, you just dedicate yourself to accumulating all the skills in the game without leveling them up, you'll soon find yourself too far into the game with an underpowered, unwieldy character with far too many skills to keep track of, and none of them being actually effective at slaying monsters. In our hurry to be the best artists we can possibly be, a lot of times we forget that patience is essential to our craft, and that the whole idea of the genius prodigy that masters every skill upon their first inspection of it is unrealistic at best and rather counterproductive at worst. Discipline isn't cramming knowledge into your brain as if you put all the day's food into a blender and then chug it. You won't be able to taste each meal, and at the end you won't even know what it was you ate. There could have been a bug in there for all you know. Discipline is patience, consistency, and focus. Discipline is watching what you eat, eating reasonably sized portions, eating slowly, chewing your food properly, and making sure you don't eat an entire pizza for dessert. Delicious, sweet, beautiful pizza. Anyway, if you're one of those artists that has terabytes of tutorials, courses, and books, take a while to organize them. Figure out what you've got. Determine what you should learn first, and then consume them slowly, taking the time to properly process and assimilate each one. Sure, it will take longer, but then you didn't really expect to be the most powerful Poketrainer within your first hour of gameplay, right? Sorry, but there's no speed run for being an artist. This one is gonna have to be a long play. That's gonna be it for now. As you might have noticed, I did things a little bit differently today. This time I actually wrote a script of the entire video and read it. It might feel a little bit different, it might sound a little different. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you like this better. I kind of felt that the other way I was doing things was getting a little bit rambly, so I think this might be a little bit better. Let me know. As always, let's do the YouTube thing where if you like this video, you'll like it, and if you want to watch more of my stuff, you'll subscribe and all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing to me is that if you have a suggestion for a future topic, which I have received, and I'm actually going to get to those, leave it in the comments or just send me a message or let me know. As always, if you want to see, if you want to get a high-resolution version of this image in TIFF format, or even a high-resolution version of the line work in case you want to color it yourself, be sure to check out my Patreon. And if you want to watch me work live, I also have a Twitch channel. You'll find me anywhere you want as OAbnormal, and that includes all social media. So just look up OAbnormal and you'll find me anywhere you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in our next video. Stay naughty.